The president's budget is replete with what they would do if they could. Massive tax increases, more spending, all of which the American people can thank the Republican House for, will not see the light of day.
All right, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell making those remarks on Tuesday. Joining us to provide his insight is Kevin Hassett, former senior economic advisor for the Trump administration. Kevin, listen, one of the tenets of what President Biden has in his budget is to massively raise taxes to, quote unquote, reduce the deficit, which is a joke. He wants to raise corporate taxes from 21% to 28%. What impact would that have on both job growth and the economy?
Yeah, Joe Biden's socialist tax policy is really the worst tax proposal I've ever seen. You highlight, one of the bad things about it, it raises the corporate tax rate from 21 to 28%, which would once again make us about the highest corporate tax place on earth. The fact is that our taxes are exactly what you and I said they would when we cut the tax rate. It increased wages for blue collar workers and made everybody in America better off. Joe Biden is trying to make people worse off. But he's got other tax proposals in there that are really, really strange. Like, so, for example, he's got a wealth tax on rich Americans for the first time in history. It's really quite unconstitutional, I believe.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Let's say right now you're watching the show. You're not particularly wealthy. Why? Make the case to me and say, okay, he's making this case against households, 25% tax rate for households exceeding $100 million, right? That's a massive increase from what they're currently paying. If you're sitting back right now watching the show and you say, well, that doesn't affect me, why should you care? Tell that viewer who's watching right now, say, why do you care about that?
Right. Well, because what's going to happen is that the people who have all that money are the people that build houses and buy cars and so on. And they're all going to move out of the U.S. or maybe to Florida, to Texas. But if you're in California and you wonder why your real estate prices haven't been going up, it's because these really, really high tax rates have been chasing everybody out of the state. And what Joe Biden wants to do basically is do for America what the blue states have already done to their citizens, which is raise taxes so much that people start to move. There was this famous example back in the Clinton years where you might recall that they decided to have a tax on yachts because they thought that, like, the fat cat guys who bought yachts, were not particularly attractive, and it would be easy to get voters to agree to that. But Clinton and the Democrats themselves repealed it because what happened was they had such a high tax on yachts that all the guys who had jobs making yachts lost their jobs. And then the unions leaned on the Democrats to do away with the yacht tax. And so the fact is that there's a long history of Democrats trying to find somebody who's evil enough so that it's okay to tax them. But there really isn't such a person. It's just free enterprise. And when you step in front of free enterprise, you're being socialist.
You don't have to talk about the yacht tax to a guy from Rhode Island. The Ocean State got hit hard by that. We lost a lot of jobs. And especially as a kid who grew up from a dad that sold boats for a living. I understand that one. But one of the other taxes that he's going after is Biden's going after the oil and gas industry. He wants to scrap these subsidies, which oil industry officials say are necessary to ensure investment. Explain how that might affect what we pay at the pump and how and sort of the industry overall.
Right. Well, basically what happens is if you're going to build an oil well, then it's got maybe a 10 or 20-year payback period. It's pretty expensive to make or build an oil well or to sink an oil well. And so what the U.S. government does is it has tax incentives historically that encourage people to put wells up, and especially to put wells up in places that are tricky to drill. On net, the oil industry is about the highest taxed industry in the country. And so these subsidies for investment, are good for the price of energy, good for the supply at the pump, but they're not driving oil companies to basically not pay tax. In fact, they are about the highest tax companies in the country, despite these subsidies. But what Joe Biden's really doing is he's got a war on fossil fuel. And,
right.
we're producing, more than 1 million barrels a day less than we did when he took office. And, making it harder to drill is just going to make it so that prices go up and we're more reliant on Russian energy and so on. It's a terrible, terrible thing. And the other thing about the budget, Sean, I know we might be running out of time, is it's unbelievable how much spending he's got in there. If you compare it to what we thought was going to happen in these years when we left the White House, it's $10 trillion more spending than what he would have inherited from President Trump over 10 years.
Unbelievable. Kevin Hassett, I wish I had more time, but thank you for helping us break it down.